Good.
Correct.
I just sit here and look. I just like looking pretty.
All right, am I late?
You're right on.
Your mic's on?
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to call the meeting of the Board of Public Works to order on February 27, 2020. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Hello?
Hi, Commissioner Pappas.
Yes,
We're on the air.
thank you.
Could the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Donches,
Here.
Commissioner Tease,
Present.
Commissioner Pappas,
Here.
Commissioner Moriarty,
Here.
Commissioner Shoneman.
Here.
Now, Commissioner Pappas is participating by phone, so by law, there are several questions we need to ask. Number one, we need to ask Commissioner Pappas the reason that you cannot attend in person.
I have a scheduling conflict.
Okay, and we have
So I'll
to,
be signing off at 7, yeah.
signing off at 7. We need to ask you to list the names of any other people present at the place from which you are participating.
My son, Thomas Pappas,
Okay.
and that's it.
And we need to note that all votes taken during a meeting in which any member, in this case Commissioner Pappas, participates remotely by phone shall be by roll call. So all of our votes have to be by roll call. All right, item 2, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Any discussion? Now, we have to take all these votes by roll call. Could the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Donches,
Yes.
Commissioner Tease.
Yes.
Commissioner Pappas,
Yes.
Commissioner Moriarty,
Yes.
Commissioner Shoneman.
Yes.
Item 3, is there a motion to approve the minutes of the Board of Public Works of December 19th?
Move to approve the minutes of the Board of Public Works meeting of December 19th, 2019.
Discussion?
I just wanted to point out, I apologize for any mix-up. I was a little confused because those meeting minutes looked a little bit different because I think that the mayor was counted, because usually the mayor doesn't vote. So it was correct that the meeting minutes were correct that I did vote no on the project relating to the office over at the landfill. And I did, and I listened to the meeting minutes, I listened to the tape, and I actually did, it was my error, I did abstain from the HKT Architects as a contract for $997,000. I didn't approve of the project, but I obviously wouldn't want a project going forward without having an architect. So that's why it was my error, and I apologize for any extra work it may have caused.
But are you saying that the mayor, are you saying that the minutes as prepared are correct? Or are you?
That is correct. They have me down as no as voting for the project, and they have me as abstaining from the architect contract, which I do, which that probably is accurate.
Okay. So the motion is to approve the minutes of December 19th. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Donches,
Yes.
Commissioner Tease, Commissioner Pappas,
Yes.
Commissioner Moriarty,
Yes.
Commissioner Shoneman.
Yes.
Item 4, which is the minutes of the meeting of January 30. Is there a motion on that?
So moved.
Motion is to approve those minutes. Is there any discussion? Would you please call the roll?
Mayor Donches?
Yes.
Commissioner Tease?
Yes.
Commissioner Pappas?
Yes.
Commissioner Moriarty?
Yes.
Commissioner Shoneman?
Yes.
Now we have public comment. Is there any member of the public who would like to address the board? If not, we'll go to item 6, which is a step 3 grievance. What? Is there someone here from ASME to present the grievance?
Yes.
So please just, for the record, identify yourself and then address the grievance issue.
Yep. Okay. So I'm Matthew Davidson, Chief Steward for ASME, Local 365. Tonight with me, I have Roger Lavoie, the grievant. Also, I have our chapter chair, Scott Leard, with us. So I'll go over the grievance real quick here. So this is an overtime bypass. Articles in section of the contract that have been violated, so this is Article 9, so that'd be overtime. Any and all of the provisions and past practice. On this particular night, we had sign maintenance work being performed. And Roger is qualified sign maintenance and should have been called out off the master list for that work. He's also held the position for 5 years, so he's very well qualified. He trained a lot of the sign maintenance people that we have currently right now. The grievance, so that was a 10 3/4 hours overtime shift. So the grievance is for that lost time. Contract-wise, and I have some handouts for you if you'd like to see them. Contract.
Have handouts?
Yep, I have some
Would you
handouts.
bring it up and we'll distribute it?
Sure.
You've got copies?
There's one that's just, there's only 5 copies, so a couple may have to share. That is copies of the contract. Here we have,
Is that Article 9, Matt?
this is specific.
Okay, they do have that.
Okay,
Yep.
all right, I'll keep that then. Let me keep this one here. Okay, so this is,
Okay.
signed.
You put it in the front of the book. Okay, so if the handout is the contract,
Yep.
each commissioner was given a copy of the full
Yep, good.
contract
Good.
in preparation.
All right, so I have a couple more. This one's signed maintenance PDF. Truck driver PDF.
So since we've got the entire contract, if you just tell us
Yeah, I have a couple others also.
okay, beyond the contract?
Yep.
Okay.
So that's the signed maintenance PDF and this
Go ahead, give it to the commissioners.
Okay, so the union's position on this is put the people that know what they're doing on the job. So Article 9 has a process by which overtime would be called out. Article 9H, work shall be offered first on a rotating basis among all qualified employees by classification in the department of the division which normally performs work. If the overtime situation requires additional employees, such overtime shall be offered to any qualified employee in the department and then to any qualified employee in the division. So there's a process to the overtime rotation. On the so you got a truck driver handout.
I just want to point out, Matt, that these are 2 pages of a much lengthier job description, so I
Right,
don't.
and I have them here if you want to
Yeah,
read
okay, because
read the whole
I think,
thing.
in fairness, the commissioners should see the entire job description, not
Yep.
just 2 pages. Okay.
Yep. So I have those here if you need to see them. So the sign maintenance PDF or job description, if you look on the second page, this is the work that was being performed that night. Installs roadway striping in the city. Responsible for, hang on, I need my glasses. Is responsible for ensuring that his or her crew correctly installs and maintains proper construction work area when working within adjacent to city streets. Performs assists hired crews for crosswalks, stop bars, parking, stall, striping, and long lining. Paints crosswalks, parking lines, stop bars, lane lines, other striping using painting and striping equipment. So this was all the work that was performed that night on the overtime schedule. Roger is a past sign maintenance employee, and this is all work that he is qualified for. Also, if you look at, you can take a look at the truck driver, street repair, who is the person that they used that night. In the second page, it has their job duties. None of such work shows up on their job description. Management's going to kind of minimize the work and say, oh, it's just putting out cones, but it's much more than that. They need to know exactly what the paint crew is doing so that they can stay ahead of the paint crew. So the paint crew has a new section to move to as they work through the night. Otherwise, the paint crew is just going to be standing around. As I said, Roger's held that position for quite a number of years, roughly 5 years. The overtime call-out process is the same for every department, same for every classification in the division. You want to get the people that know that work first. So that's why you go to the That's why you go to the classification list first, and you get those people that normally perform that work on that job first, and then you go to the alternates beyond that. So also, with that, I did a information request for a couple of things. A copy of the master overtime list, which I have here, which shows the call-outs by classification, and then by qualified personnel after that. And I can hand that out if you'd like to see a copy of that. So this is kind of a new situation where they introduced a laborer into this line painting crew that really may or may not know what's going on at night on that crew. Our position is, like I said, that we call the qualified people first and get them on that crew first, because they're the ones that know what's going on. So that's why we have this grievance for the missed overtime. So I do have, so let's see. I do have that. So that's basically our position. The line striping work was the work that was being performed that night, and that we'd like to get the guys that know what they're doing in the rotation first, rather than just grabbing somebody from anywhere and putting them on that crew. It's how the contract reads. If you look at Article 9, and that's our position. Roger, did you have anything else that you wanted to add to that?
Roger Lavoie, hired in '87. Bounced around, did a lot of different jobs in the city of Nashua. I did this particular position for a little over 5 years. From day one, anytime there was overtime that fell into this position's classification, we would call by qualification. It went to the master list by qualification. Apparently, some of the requests for information we made no longer exists for when I worked in the classification. I mean, we don't even have information stating that I was on the job. I went out for a stint of an injury, and prior to that injury, I worked a good 2 to 3 weeks on the job, training guys by classification, then qualification. I was training the individuals that are doing the job now. And it's either 2 or 3 weeks that approximately 20 hours a week, working nights on overtime, training these guys painting Main Street, that there's no record of, not even in the qualification list, not even what HR provided. I just find that odd, and it was always called out by qualification. I've had meetings back with the prior manager of the department, who is no longer with us, and Mr. Ibarra, and they asked me how the overtime should be called out. And I told them, back then we had assistant sign maintenance. And it would go sign maintenance first, assistant sign maintenance next, then out of classification in the master rotation, by qualification. When they went out looking for somebody other than a sign maintenance man, a sign maintenance assistant, it was always somebody that had their hours and qualified to do this work. And it's just up until probably, I think it was while I was out on my injury, that they started backfilling with laborers, truck drivers. And that's where we come to the grievance. I think they're overlooking people that are qualified, should be out there working with these individuals. There's a lot of next move, next move, next move, and it's not done by a laborer. It's somebody that understands the job, can make that next move, not create head-on traffic collisions on Main Street. You gotta know where you're putting the cones, where the guy's going next, what he's doing next at all times. So I strongly believe in protecting the classification and the qualification. Many of the guys get a chance to come over and learn jobs. That's how they get qualified. And that's how they get identified to do that job, is because they go out and they learn the job and get qualified. And I just feel that's something you really need in this particular situation. I've had many a times be painting a crosswalk, had the proper personnel out there, and a car will come right through it, right through your paintwork, just miss you, and your head's gonna be on a swivel, and you're not just directing traffic. You're moving cones, you're setting up cones, you're mixing paint, you're putting down beads, you're doing a lot of different functions to make the work flow. And that's why I feel there's a grievance here.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Lavoy? I guess I do. So where were you that night? Were you working or not working?
No, I was not. I was not asked.
So you were at home?
Yes.
And who would the overtime go to if you were to prevail in the grievance?
Who would it go to?
Yeah. You?
I was always a strong believer the person that files the grievance is grieving because they feel they've been overlooked. That's typically, when I got hired, I spent 23 plus years, president, vice president, executive vice president, chief steward, 3-4 contracts. I know what's been going on. I know the lay of the land and, you know, how we got to these points of how we do this. And that's why we're here tonight.
All right. Anybody else have questions? Commissioner Schoeneman.
Just as clarification, because I'm kind of new here. The paperwork says that you are Traffic Tech 1, and that's different, slightly different classification from sign maintenance. Are they different? And in what way?
At one time, we were the same department, and things got moved around. To this day, as a tech, my supervisor still comes to me, asks me to go lay out some paint markings with him, do some measurements with him. There was many a days I was asked to work with this paint crew. So I honestly believe through the PDF process and what the PDF says, where we assist each other and we do that type work when needed, that this is where the work should be first, before you go anywhere else, qualified individuals, because we work hand in hand.
So in the overtime process,
Just so we get the record, would you mind stepping up to the microphone? When you speak, just.
Matt Davidson, in
'cause
the overtime process.
This is on tape, that's why I'm asking you to go.
Okay. In the overtime process, you would call your sign maintenance people first because they're the ones there every day doing that work. And then in the overtime process, you would have your master list next. If you needed additional people, you would call the qualified people off that master list. So even though Roger doesn't hold the position right at this point, he would be in line on the master list for the next available rotation. So
And-
I don't know if that answers your question a little better. as to how
No,
the overtime.
was the laborer, the laborer who was working, and was that person doing painting or directing traffic?
I couldn't be sure. I'm assuming they would be setting out cones and directing traffic, things of that nature. But that person really needs to understand the whole scope of what's going on. So if you're doing a four-way intersection, like I said, you need to stay ahead of the paint crew and where they're going next, so you have efficient surrounding of that intersection. So that person really needs to understand the whole scope of what's going on there.
Commissioner Moriarty?
Yeah, thank you. Just so I'm clear, according to your contract overtime, section H, where it says, first, overtime is be among all qualified employees by classification. So that's number one, classification. So
Right,
to be
that was-
truthful, this is not an issue because the grievant has a different classification.
He has a different classification,
Okay.
but he would be next in line once
Not
that
according to that,
classification's
but he might be next
exhausted.
in line according to the next paragraph by qualification. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
So there's no grievance about the classification overtime. It's the qualification. He's next qualified. I'm just
He-
trying to get this.
Right,
Clear
So,
according to the
so they had
contract.
two sign maintenance people working. The third person they called out from a truck driver classification, which doesn't normally perform this work. So the third person that was called out should have been called out from the master list, in which Roger would be qualified for. So does that answer your question? Because you still look a little confused. So the normal group that would be called first would be the sign maintenance guys. Once you exhaust that group, then you would move on to the master list, whoever else is qualified, the next people. So Roger would be off that secondary list.
Thank you.
So, it's hard, I hope I'm not interrupting.
Commissioner Pappas?
Okay, so my question is, the truck driver / laborer performed the traffic control, correct?
I assume so, yes, I wasn't there.
Okay, so it's your position that the traffic control for when you're doing striping is different than traffic control you might do for, say, if let's say that you were patching potholes.
Exactly, very much so, because you need to understand the whole scope of the work that the line striping crew is going to complete that night.
Are you through, Commissioner
Thank you.
Pappas? Is that it, Commissioner Pappas? I just
Well,
want
I may have a question after the superintendent presents. I guess my question will be if traffic control is, when we're calling out, if traffic control is handled differently than the actual job, like patching potholes or fixing if you have a sewer problem. I guess that seems to be the sticking point.
Yes, now, I'm not trying to limit your questions, but just for the moment, I didn't know if you have anything right now, because you're not here, so it's hard to see what you're thinking.
Well,
If-
you know what? I guess I'll ask the traffic control question once the superintendent presents.
All right, and we'll be glad to call on you at that time.
Thank you.
Commissioner Tease?
Hi, Matt.
Hey.
In our package, we have a copy of Superintendent Ibera's grievance response, and I'm interested in your classification of what he said. Is this a true or false statement? Management believes it met the contract language by calling out sign maintenance to perform the striping work and truck driver laborer to perform traffic control as they normally perform the work, particularly in light of what you clarified for Commissioner Moriarty. Is this true or false?
I would consider that to be false. Every classification handles their own traffic control. When I'm on the street during the day with the trash truck, I handle my own version of traffic control. When wastewater's out there jetting a line, they handle their own traffic control. When streets are out patching a pothole, say, they handle their own traffic control. So every classification handles its own traffic control within its scope of work.
But within the contract, if I understood what you said to Commissioner Moriarty, the classification was correct, it was the qualification wasn't there.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Classification was not correct.
Right. The classification wasn't correct because that person didn't have the qualifications.
Understood.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Anything else from the commissioners? I guess I have another question. So Mr. Lavoy is a traffic tech, right?
Correct.
But you did not give us a traffic tech description?
No, I didn't. Actually, I probably do have one. I only have one copy of that.
All right, thank you. All right, if anybody wants, I don't know if we need copies, but I was curious about this. All right, anything else from the union? Does the department, is someone going to make a presentation for the department?
Yes, Superintendent Ibarra.
Mr.
And
Ibarra?
also, our operations manager, Mike Harris, is also here. So you're both welcome to come. Should be pointed out, too, that that Mike Harris was a foreman for, how many years?
8 years.
8 years, and has been with the department for
24 years.
for 24 years as well, so he has a lot of expertise. Not to minimize yours, Superintendent, but none of you see Mike very often.
John Ibarra, Superintendent Streets. Good evening. Thanks for having me. I'm going to refer to the PDFs also, but I'm going to open up referring to Article 4 in the contract under management's rights. You have that there you can refer to. But it reads, except as otherwise expressly and specifically provided in this agreement, the union recognizes the direction of the division's operations, the determination of the methods and means by which such operations are to be conducted, supervision, management, and control of the division's workforce. I'll leave that there. On a daily basis, management's responsible for prioritizing work and delegating staff to perform said work. We have many classifications in the department. We're out maintaining the infrastructure. We're paving, doing sidewalks, line striping, hauling material. In these PDFs here, I would refer to the sign maintenance first. There was a piece in here that was neglected. The sign maintenance position performs as a lead person of a two-person crew that erects and maintains traffic signs and installs roadway striping in the city of Nashua, and is responsible for ensuring that his or her crew correctly installs and maintains the proper construction work area when working within or adjacent to city streets. All right? So that's a lead of a two-person crew. This particular day, for this overtime operation, we did call out 2 sign maintenance and 1 truck driver laborer. All classifications can work as a laborer if they're not operating in their classification capacity. So if an operator's not operating, they would be laboring. If a driver's not driving, they're going to be laboring. So anybody can perform labor. During the day, we use labor to do traffic control, traffic calming. They could be setting up cones, sign packages, holding paddles, or just directing by hand. So they are maintaining traffic control. I see traffic control as traffic control. I don't see any variation between that. Each job is different. You know, if you're doing a sewer dig, you're going to have a guy on either end in coned off area. You're moving the cones as you need to. Striping, similar. But as you do an intersection, you're moving the cones differently to block lanes of wet paint. But my takeaway from this is sign maintenance is a lead person of a two-man crew. On this day, we had 2 sign maintenance and 1 driver laborer. We normally go to the laborer from the drivers, as the position for laborer was abolished in 2011. The truck driver assumed that labor role. So when we call out an overtime, we go to the driver list first for a laborer after we've gone down securing whatever other classifications we may need to perform the work. So if we need 2 operators, we get 2 operators, 2 drivers, 2 masons, 2 laborers. That's a management decision, staffing the workforce for any given project. And that's how we approach this. The guys that normally perform the work get the opportunity first. So classification seniority does take its role. All right, I'm looking for sign maintenance. I got what I needed for the sign maintenance to do their work. Then I got a laborer to direct the traffic. And I guess that would be all I'd really have for this.
Any questions from the commissioners?
Mike, do you have anything to add?
Well, let's do Mr.
Mike
Oh,
Harris,
sorry.
Division Operations.
Hold on just a second, sorry.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr.? Now, Mr. Harris is going to talk next, but does anybody at this point have any questions for Mr. Ibarra?
If I could, is this a good time for me to ask him a question?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So let's say it's during the day, and you're out painting crosswalks and doing other such tasks. Would a laborer perform traffic control during paintings such as that?
The potential exists, yes. Depends on where they're working. Sometimes it's just 2 sign maintenance guys out doing the striping if they're on a quiet street or a neighborhood. If they're on a busier lane for safety, we'll add traffic control measures. That also depends on staffing. So we have sick and vacation. Depends what we have for work going. So that's case by case. But yes, it could be labor. It could be if Roger is slow in his traffic tech position, those guys work across the aisle. So if he doesn't have any traffic tech work, he may be asked to assist sign maintenance, and vice versa. Sign maintenance may be asked to assist traffic tech. But when you're calling out overtime, it's by classification seniority. So you're going to go to sign maintenance because that's what you need. Once I secure that, we go to the laborer.
So I think you're saying that laborers are capable of doing and routinely do traffic control.
That is correct.
And qualified to do that work.
Correct.
And you often assign people in other job classifications down to the function of laborer in order to perform traffic control
Based on our needs.
functions on a sign, on a striping or other job.
Yep. Correct.
All right. Anything, anybody other have questions for Mr. Ibarra? How about now, why don't we go to Mr. Harris then?
Mike Harris, Division Operations Manager. I just feel the traffic control is handled by a laborer every day, and having the 2 sign maintenance individual there, they're the lead person, they can direct that laborer to tell them where to move the cones, or even have a conversation before it even starts to where to move the cones at that time. You know, when the section is painted, and then they move on to the next section to paint. But I feel the laborer can do traffic control because he does it every day on sewer digs or potholes or lane closures or road closures. So that's how I feel.
Questions? Anybody have questions?
Add anything? Nick may want to add something.
All right, but I have a question for Mr.
Yep.
Harris if no one else does.
Yep.
So you've been with the city for how long?
24 years,
And how long during that period have laborers been used for traffic control?
since I've been here.
So for the last 24 years?
24 years, yeah.
Okay. Anybody else have questions for Mr. Harris? All right,
Thank you.
Mr. Caggiano?
Nick Caggiano, Park and Rec Superintendent. I've been here just about 20 years. In all these PDFs, there's some common tasks, and being a traffic control person is one of those. It's in just about every description. So typically, if we have a tree job, we have a bucket truck with 2 groundsman maintenance people, and then we have a laborer that is in another chase vehicle and does traffic control. So traffic control is in everybody's PDF and is a laborer's job. Groundsman 1.
Questions? Commissioner Tease?
I don't know where we are in the process, but in everything I do, I try to exercise common sense and hear both sides of the story. And in this instance, I don't hear enough to support for me to vote in favor of this grievance, and I would move to deny the grievance as presented.
There's a motion to deny the grievance. Does anybody else have questions or questions for anybody who presented? Commissioner Schoeneman.
I do have one question. We were given a divisional organizational chart for each department. And under traffic foreman, under the traffic foreman, there are 2 positions, traffic tech and sign maintenance. And then under street foreman, the positions are truck driver, equipment operator, masons. I don't know how the overtime master list works, but it looks to me from here that if you were looking for, if you have 2 people in sign maintenance and you needed another person, would you usually go to this, within the same classification as in, to traffic tech next? Would you usually go there next?
No, you go by classification. when
You would go
call out.
over to
So.
laborer.
You exhaust your sign maintenance personnel, then you would go to the master list, sign maintenance qualified, if you didn't get what you needed for sign maintenance. In this particular case, I decided we needed 2 guys to strike, 1 guy to do traffic. But again, case by case.
Okay.
But calling out, no matter what classification, it's always by seniority and rotation.
Okay, so there are people who are in the labor, the truck driver labor classification who have more seniority and experience with what you were asking them to do that day than a traffic tech, like Mr. Lavoy or someone else. So you would go from your sign maintenance people over to the more experienced people, even if they weren't in the same classification?
No,
Am I understanding this
All by
right?
classification seniority.
Okay.
So, just, let me take another step. Oh, go ahead, Mike, if you want to.
Yeah, Mike Harris, Division Operations Division. I can explain a little better. It's like, so there's traffic over here, and then there's street departments here, but we're all one right now. Traffic and streets are all one department. But, so it goes by seniority, but then it would go, like, you can get qualified as a traffic, sign maintenance individual, or you can get qualified, say if you're a truck driver, you can get qualified as a mason. You work on your hours to get qualified. And that's how, you could be anywhere, you could be an operator, you could be a truck driver, you could be, any other classification, and then you can get qualified as that position, that like for a mason or traffic tech or a sign maintenance guy.
So if you had that master list and you're looking at the roster, you would see the different classifications next to the individual's name of what they're qualified to do.
And the person that you chose to do traffic control in this instance had more seniority than Mr.
No, it was
Lavoy?
through rotation. So the book leaves off. Every opportunity is called out and works back to the beginning, or when somebody takes it, stops there. So then the next guy up was offered that position, he took it. Or they called numerous people until they got somebody that accepted the overtime.
And this was and you're talking about the laborer who was
Yes.
assigned to do the traffic control job, right?
Right, the laborer comes out of first, it comes out of the truck driver classification, because it's truck driver laborer, so they'll get offered it first. And then it would go to the master list, which it could be any classification that would fill in as a laborer to do traffic control.
Okay, so Mr. Lavoy's grievance is that he was not called out. He has more experience, but not seniority.
He's one of the top senior guys, but it's on a rotating basis, so at that time, yeah.
I know what Commissioner Schoeneman is confused about. So what happens is when depending upon what you're calling out for, so they were calling out for somebody to direct traffic. The person who normally performs that work would get the first opportunity on overtime, which would be the truck driver laborer.
Okay,
So then they would go to that truck driver laborer classification, call out by whatever order that is, maybe by seniority, maybe by next in line, however they are in the rotation. And then after they exhaust that, then they would go to the master list and then call
Okay.
it. So that's,
All right,
hopefully
that's
that
clear.
clarifies.
Yeah,
I think
that's
that's what you
clear.
were
Okay,
asking.
you. Yep.
All right, any other comments or questions by the commissioners? Commissioner Moriarty?
I guess my comment would be, again, as I read the contract, because that's what we're talking about, the contract, there was no violation by the city as far as calling by classification. You called in 2 sign maintenance people by classification. The grievance is not a sign maintenance by classification, so there's no violation there. So that brings you to the next part of the contract that says if the overtime situation requires additional employees, then such overtime shall be offered to any qualified employee. So the question would be then that laborer, truck driver, was he qualified? That's the only issue in my mind, was he qualified? And you're testifying that, yes, that laborer, truck driver is certainly qualified to do what he did. And if that's the case, then I would agree there's no case for a grievance here.
Commissioner Pappas, do you have any questions or comments? I'm just asking you because you're not right here, and I just want to make sure you're...
No, and I think I think that both sides were very clear and gave very good answers.
All right, now, I'm going to ask again if anybody has any questions or comments among the commissioners. If not, we will take up the motion, which is to deny the grievance. Does anybody else have questions or comments? And there will be a roll call vote because of the participation of one commissioner remotely by phone. Any other questions or comments? And the motion, therefore, is to deny the grievance. A yes vote would be to deny. A no vote is to take it to not really to grant, but not to deny. All right. Diane, could you please call the roll?
Mayor Donches?
Yes.
Commissioner Tease?
Yes.
Commissioner Pappas?
Yes.
Commissioner Moriarty?
Yes.
Commissioner Schoeneman?
Yes.
The grievance on motion voted by the commission is denied.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Tease.
In an effort to, given the circumstances of us having to take a roll call vote for each motion and recognizing the fact that we have 20 or so motions, would you be willing for us to perhaps make motions for each separate department and vote on all those motions at once, so long as we give the superintendent adequate time to make a presentation and for us to ask questions.
If there is no objection from any of the commissioners, I would be willing to consolidate the motions into one. But if any commissioner wishes to separate at any time, we would certainly take up the issues separately. So that, a commissioner might want to say yes on one and no on another, something like that. We could certainly separate the issues. All right, going back to the agenda. We have Parks Recs. We do have two motions, and under the suggestion of Commissioner Tease,
Keep getting promotions.
or I'm not sure about that. Under the suggestion of Commissioner Tease, we can take up those two motions together once we have an explanation of each, unless a commissioner would like to see it separated, in which case we will separate. So could we have Park Rec address item A and item B?
Nick Caggiano, Park and Rec Superintendent. Good evening. Motion A is to approve the use of funds for our every other year treatment of the mill pond and the canal in Mine Falls Park. We started this program back in 2008, and it's done tremendous good to the water quality in both of those things, water bodies. Community development is handling the package and the contract because it includes other water bodies, but this is our portion, and it's being funded out of the cell tower. It's over $25,000, so that's why it's before you. Motion B, I met a really nice young lady who's going for her Cadet Girl Scout Silver Award. And her project, it's very comparable to an Eagle Scout. Her project is to put mason beehives along the wood line in 2 or 3 locations at Greeley Park by the gardens to help pollinate. I gave you some information on them. They are very, very docile bees. They won't sting unless you're gonna squish them. I think it's a great learning tool. I learned something from this young lady. So those are our 2 motions tonight.
Move to approve A and B under Park and Recreation.
Could I ask a question?
Sure.
So the motion is to approve both. Is the, these bee homes, now I support the idea of helping bees. I've thought of becoming a beekeeper, but I've never done it, just because of time. Now, is this a construction in Greeley Park that requires approval of the Board of Aldermen?
No, if you refer to the little fact sheet, this is the size of a birdhouse. They're just gonna put on a couple of posts.
Okay.
There's no structure or building that's going up.
Okay. The motion has been made to approve items A and B. Is there any questions or discussion by the commissioners on either of those items? Commissioner Schoeneman.
I wanted to ask if there's any kind of, I read that this was the treatment for the weeds in the waterways is done every 2 years. Is there any kind of a survey that they do? They do a survey after the treatment to make sure that it's done well. Is there any kind of pre-treatment survey done to see exactly what the population is, and not just, dumping these things in, and making sure that, there's a need for it?
Yes. The short answer is yes. They do a pre-treatment survey because that's going to determine how much material they have to apply. And then they're required by the DES to come back after, and I believe it's 10 weeks, and they have to do a assessment and send that report to the state, and we get a copy of that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments by the commissioners?
I do have one.
Well, I looked down the table and there's Alderman O'Brien. I didn't even know you were
I've been
here.
remaining quiet here, yeah, up until this point.
I didn't even know you were.
Just basically, just.
Oh, wait, well, so, have you been here since the
Yes,
beginning?
Yes.
he has.
Well, I
It's good to see
apologize.
you too, Mr. Mayor.
Let's recognize, you're down the row, I've got people blocking me, I didn't really
I
see
was
you.
kind of hiding, thank you.
I did, and I assumed if Alderman O'Brien was here, he would have said something by now, so. So,
No,
let's
thank-
recognize Alderman O'Brien as having
Thank you,
been here
Mr.
since the
Mayor.
beginning of the
Ah.
meeting. Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you. I take particular interest in this because I love our waterways, but familiar with up at the lakes, in the lakes region. I know the state is involved, and I see the cost is basically $30,000, almost $34,000. Do we get any state grants? Or have we applied to state grants?
Yes, we have.
Okay.
And we have gotten them in the past. They won't let you know until probably April or May.
Okay.
But the permitting, in order to approve this, because the permitting is very lengthy up at the state, they have to go to Fish and Game, and everybody has to sign off. So that's why Community Development, who's running the project, has to start this process now.
Thank you.
Anything else? Motion is to approve items A and B. All those in, oh, excuse me, we need to do a roll call. Could you please call the roll?
Mayor Donches,
Yes.
Commissioner Tease.
Yes.
Commissioner Pappas,
Yes.
Commissioner Moriarty.
Yes.
Commissioner Shoneman.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Now we go to item number 9, wastewater. And we have 2 items under wastewater.
Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to read them, so just, I don't think we read the
I
other
missed
ones.
solid
but
waste,
I'm happy to read under solid waste A and B before we discuss them, if that's helpful.
All right, could you, I'm sorry, I skipped solid waste, so we're now on solid waste. If you would like to read
Okay,
it.
so under solid waste, motion A, to approve change order number 2 to the contract with SCS Field Services of Reston, Virginia, in the amount of $287,565 for the expansion of Four Hills Gas Collection Control System. Funding will be through Department 168 Solid Waste Fund Bond Activity Landfill Gas Expansion, fiscal year 20. Motion B, to approve amendment number 2 for a 2-year extension of the contract with Casella Recycling, LLC of Charleston, Mass. for the transportation and processing of the city's single-stream recyclables for an amount not to exceed $400,000 annually. Funding through Department 168 Solid Waste Fund, Solid Waste Account Classification 55, other contracted services.
So thank you, Commissioner Pappas, who has presented both motions. Now could, Ms.,
No, he's not here, I'm speaking to the solid waste.
oh, okay.
So
I didn't,
Superintendent
directors.
LaFleur is actually in Concord, was at a legislative hearing, so he couldn't be here. So the first is just our normal gas collection. SCS has performed this work numerous times and done a great job for us, and keeping up with our gas collection is very important to make sure that we control odors. Does anybody have any questions on this? I'm happy to answer. It's pretty straightforward. We've done this a million times, but. Okay. The second is our single-stream recycling contract. We have had a very good relationship with Casella. We also have, now we are taking in some of their glass, which helps reduce the amount of cost of annually for our single stream. We're using it for cover and also in the setback, and they are paying for us for that, and they're taking that off the cost of what they're charging us. So that's been very good. Casella's also been, and I just wanted to quickly mention, I met with them. Jeff and I met with Casella. We had a very good meeting, and they're very optimistic about the future of recycling. And I'm happy to go over. I know it's getting late, but they gave us a number of outlets that they have, really all domestic, for all of the recyclables that we're shipping, so that was really encouraging to hear. And I'm happy to go over that with anybody that's interested. Cardboard is, for instance, is going to domestic mills in New York, Massachusetts, and also some in Canada. Mixed paper going to West Virginia and made into pulp. Milk jugs and laundry bottles are shipped to Alabama and made into pellets. And I'll just mention one other thing, because this is sort of interesting. Tubs and lids, which are plastics 3 through 7, are shipped to Alabama and made into paint cans. And the next time you purchase paint, you may notice that the can is made of actually plastic instead of metal, because this mill in Alabama supplies over 85% of the paint cans sold in the U.S. So anyway, pretty cool. Glass is shipped to New Hampshire and Massachusetts for use as aggregates. So really encouraging that there are domestic markets for all of these recyclables. Casella is committed to recycling, and we've had a very good relationship with them, so we're happy to continue that. I also have, in front of you, you have this really great handout that they gave us that we're going to be using a lot to try to educate residents, but a lot of information on the myths and facts regarding recycling. So any questions about recycling?
All right, so we have the 2 questions before us. Is there any discussion or questions regarding either item A or B? Commissioner Moriarty.
Yeah, on item B, motion B, I noticed in our packet that the January recycling charge was $41,000. And so adding that up, going 12 months, we're gonna exceed the $400,000 that we're approving today. So I was just wondering, what are you looking for, Director, for the future? Do you think that's gonna come down?
No, I don't think in the foreseeable future it'll come down, but what will offset that is the glass that we're taking. So they'll be crediting us for somewhere around $200,000 worth of glass that we'll be accepting. So that'll keep us in the $400,000 range.
Thank you. The other question, just to add to that, is, as you know, the state of New Hampshire just came out with their own recycling report, and they recommend crushing all the glass and not recycling it and using it throughout the state, on walkways, parks, or whatever, Is that what you're saying Casella's is doing now? Are they coming to crush the glass?
So they are crushing the glass. They're crushing it finer for us because that's what the state of New Hampshire requires. But they're using it, there's a big push right now in New Hampshire for glass to be used as aggregate. So they're trying to get communities to use it for underneath sidewalks, as road base. In fact, the legislature, you can help me, Alderman O'Brien, but I believe is trying to pass legislation that would require DOT to use a certain amount of glass in their road base. So that's really where the big push is right now for glass. We need it because we can use it for cover, so we don't have to pay for cover material, which is a great thing, and also we need to fill our setback. So that's what we're using it for. Yeah.
Thank you.
Anyone else? If not, the motion is,
I'm sorry, Commissioner Schoeneman had a question.
Commissioner Schoeneman.
So attachment B, the paper that's in the packet, talks about the price per ton and the cost per load. How many tons are in a load?
That's a good question. I'd have to, it really depends on what the makeup of the load would be. Glass is heavier than other things. But I would guess somewhere around 20 tons or so, maybe, on average. But I could get you the exact numbers.
And the formula that would reduce processing costs, it's unreadable to me. Can
Yeah.
you explain what,
So,
is that the graph,
yeah,
the
so
glass
I can sort of.
crushing?
So ACR is the average commodity revenue. And so we have a ceiling price of $150 per ton. What that means is this is the highest cost that we'll ever pay for recyclables. However, there's a whole big calculation that goes on that Sally Highland could help us with probably a little bit better. But if for some reason the threshold is less than $80 a ton of that average commodity revenue, then we would share in some of the profits of the recyclables. However, if it's 80 or greater, then we would not get anything. So, but there's a whole formula that goes into all of that. So, and I could get that more information for you on that. If you'd like, on how that's all done.
Thank you.
Sure.
Anything else? Could you please call the roll?
Mayor Donches?
Yes?
Commissioner Tease?
Yes.
Commissioner Pappas?
Yes.
Commissioner Moriarty?
Yes.
Commissioner Shoneman?
Yes.
All right, let's go on to wastewater.
I'm happy to read the motions, if that's helpful.
Why don't you proceed then, Commissioner Pappas?
Okay. I'm under motion A, to approve the user warrants as presented. Under motion B, to approve the purchase of a Fairbanks brand vertical solid handling pump from Hayes Pump Inc. of Concord, Mass. for an amount of $30,307. Funding will be through Department 169 Fund Wastewater Account Classification, Account Category 71 Equipment.
And Mr. Boucher is here to address these items,
Evening.
especially item B, I think.
Dave Boucher, wastewater superintendent. Item B is for the purchase of a sewer pump for our Northgate pump station that services the west side of Nashua, a portion of the west side of Nashua. Currently, there's 2 pumps in the pump station. One was replaced a little while back. The second pump was the same age as the one that just failed. This would be the replacement for that one should that fail. They don't make that style anymore, so we have to, the pump that we're purchasing, when this station gets updated in the future, this will be the pump that is going in, so we'd save money in the future when the pump station gets refurbished. So this is a backup pump in case one fails.
Questions, discussion? All right, the motion is to approve items A and B. Could you please call the roll?
Mayor Donches?
Yes.
Commissioner Tease?
Yes.
Commissioner Pappas?
Yes.
Commissioner Moriarty?
Yes.
Commissioner Shoneman?
Yes.
Motion passes. So now we have engineering.
I'd be happy to read those.
Who wants to, Commissioner Tease has been asking to read items A through I. All right.
Move to approve the construction contract for the 2020 paving program, contract 1 to Sunshine Paving Corporation of Hudson, New Hampshire, in the amount of $4,014,750. Funding will be through Department 160 Admin Engineering, Funds, Bond and Trust, Activity, Paving, and Department 169 Wastewater Fund, Bond, Activity, Sewer Rehab. I move to approve under B, the construction contract for the 2020 paving program, Contract 2 to Sunshine Paving Corporation of Hudson, New Hampshire, in the amount of $4,262,733.75. Funding will be through Department 160, Admin Engineering, Funds, Bond and Trust, Activity, Paving and Department 169 Wastewater, Fund, Bond, Activity, Sewer Rehab. Under C, I move to approve the following poll license petitions, PSNH number 21-1487, number 21-1488, number 21-1447, and number 21-1448. Under D, I move to approve the award of the construction contract for the 2020 sewer replacement project to SUR Construction West, Inc. of Winchester, New Hampshire, in the amount of $1,497,993. Funding will be through Department 169 Wastewater, Fund Wastewater, Activity Sewer Rehab. Under E, I move to consider the request from owners John L. and Colleen Lyons Dupre of 7 Fairway Street for 1 building service connection to service 2 lots, 7 Fairway Street and proposed lot 109, with the recommended stipulations. Under F, I move to approve the emergency request for DPW to excavate in a 5-year moratorium street at 4 Stevens Street for the repair and/or replacement of the sewer service connection. Under G, I move to approve drain layers license for SUR Construction West, Inc. of Winchester, New Hampshire, in accordance with Nashua City Code 255-19, issuance of drain layers license. Under H, I move to consider the emergency request to excavate in a 5-year moratorium Street from Nalpathu LLC, owner of 44 Kinsley Street, for the repair and/or replacement of the sewer service connection. And finally, under I, informational, I will accept the 2020 list of streets to be paved.
All right. Now, Mr. Hudson is here to address the various items that are before us. Mr. Hudson?
Thank you very much, Dan Hudson, City Engineer. It's a very long agenda, so I don't want to go into all these in a lot of detail unless you'd like me to, so I'll kind of breeze over a few of them and speak in more depth for the things I think may be of interest, and then I'd be happy to entertain any questions. But A and B are the 2020 paving program. We bid out 2 separate bids. Sunshine Paving was the low bidder on both bids, and they did a good job for us last year. So we are recommending award of those contracts to them. There's some poll petition licenses, sewer replacement construction. We bid that out. We got 6 bids. SUR Construction West was the low bidder. They haven't done work in Nashua, to my knowledge, but they have done a lot of work around New England and have done a good job with that, so we recommend awarding to them. There was a request here, E is kind of an interesting one, where there's a landowner on 7 Fairway. Fairway doesn't have sewer. Their sewer service on that property currently runs through an abutting property to Taylor. They're proposing to subdivide the lot, and that subdivided lot desires to connect to the service, the existing service, through the other lot. What we've done is we've reviewed it, and we don't have objection to it other than we would ask for a number of stipulations to be considered. I'll just read what those are. The maintenance of the sewer service within the right-of-way shall become the responsibility of the property owners. An agreement between the property owners regarding the responsibility for the maintenance of the sewer service shall be approved by the engineering department prior to filing with the Hillsborough County Registry of Deeds. The applicant must prove that the existing sewer connection is capable of handling the flow from the 2 lots. An easement between the new lot and 171 Taylor Street, allowing rights for the new lot to use the connection crossing the 171 Taylor Street property. A CCTV inspection of the sewer service connection from the existing building to the sewer main be submitted, and the CCTV imagery shall include a linear foot counter and be of superior quality so that a condition assessment of the pipe can be made. The service connection pipe shall have no rating greater than a 2 on a PACP, which stands for Pipeline Assessment Certification Program, Condition Assessment Scale. If the pipe condition warrants replacement as determined by the engineering, the service connection will be replaced in a pipe meeting current specifications. And basically what we're asking there is investigate the pipe that's there, make sure all the proper arrangements are in place. If one of the other owners leaves or changes, we want the other owner to have the right to go replace the service should that be necessary. So that's what those stipulations are intended to do. Let's see. And then there's a couple of emergency requests for more waivers of the paving moratorium to cut into recently paved streets for sewer issues, as we've had in the past. And then the last item is the paving list, the proposed paving work this year, broken down into those 2 contracts for your information, so I'd be happy to entertain any questions.
We also do have Hayner Swanson here, who will be happy to answer any questions if you have any regarding motion E.
Commissioner Pappas.
I'm wondering, I'm sorry, just if I'm speaking out of turn. I had a little bit of static. I had a hard time hearing, but we kind of went through a lot of these quickly, and out of respect for Commissioner Schoeneman, who really has is just kind of, this is her second regular meeting, just to explain why we have the moratorium, and it's and why they have to come to the board in order to get that approved.
Sure. So obviously, we would prefer that people didn't cut into newly paved streets. Sometimes, unfortunately, that's unavoidable. So the moratorium is intended to prohibit that unless there's extenuating circumstances. If you have a sewer service to a house that isn't functioning because it's collapsed in the street, then clearly that needs to be addressed so that sewer service can continue. So there are provisions in the ordinance for restoration of the roadway, which involves repairing the trench, but also replacing the pavement 20 feet either side of the affected area. So it's it's a treatment above and beyond what the normal repair would be, but it's intended to be that way to best preserve the investment that the city's made in the paving.
So, if I can ask another question, I'm having trouble hearing. But these are both for repairs and not and not brand new ones. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay.
that's correct.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to double check that because I know that we say repair and/or replacement. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that it was that and not someone who was looking to put in brand new. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions, discussion? Commissioner Moriarty.
Just as a point of interest or fact, I thought the city, before that we pave a road, we send homeowners a letter saying, listen, we're gonna be paving a road. This is the time to think about replacing your sewer lines if you want to, right? I mean,
Yes,
something,
correct.
right? Something along that line?
Correct. We do that. We're gearing up for paving. We're sending out those notices as we speak. As a homeowner, obviously, it's can be a large expense to replace the sewer service. So, many don't jump to do that, even though we wish they would. But we do make that notification.
Do you feel these are emergency situations?
Yeah, these are. 44 Kinsley, actually, they started digging today on the property side, and that pipe is completely crumbling. They've dug out to where the sidewalk is. Unfortunately, they didn't intercept the service that was replaced, so they are going to have to go into the street if you approve this. And then the other one is same thing. We've seen the video, we've seen the pipe, and it's in poor shape, needs to be addressed.
And there's no other way they can connect but through cutting through that street.
Correct.
Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a question along that. I mean, anything can happen, I think, structurally, and, I did read briefly that one of the houses is 1880. Oh, excuse me, thank you so much.
We'll make sure you heard.
Well, I thought with my Irish booming voice, okay, how we do this? Not used to this place yet.
Hold it down. It should come on if you just hold it briefly.
Here, we give it to an expert here.
I heard you loud and clear.
Well, I know, I got that booming Irish voice, but thank you, Commissioner. I know anything, just to refresh in case somebody couldn't hear me, I did see that one of the houses is 1880, and imagine that's a very old system, but I'm very concerned. And as an alderman, one of the things we did here is the never-ending, of course it did end, but the never-ending Kinsley Street project. And it does seem shameful, but again, I understand infrastructure can fail. My question is, even in an emergency situation, is the permit fees the same as after the moratorium as during the moratorium?
Yes.
Question, follow-up if I may.
Yes.
Would looking or having this discussion of looking at an increased fee kind of assist us and try to hold the moratorium if we put that as an extra warning in the future to homeowners? I don't want to penalize anybody, that's not the objection here, but if we're investing into our streets, so to give something a little bit more teeth and to say in the letter that the fees for the moratorium period could be more than a normal
Yes,
fee to the thing.
we are looking at a fee structure, basically a pavement damage fee structure. which would be graduated so that within the first couple years, the fee would be much higher than in the next 3 years. And then after 5 years, it reduces further. But, you know, it would further reinforce that it's going to be expensive if you have to come out and do that work. I mean, the work itself, the milling 20 feet past, wherever you're cutting, that is quite an expense. Kinsley Street's, 2 lanes wide, so doing that work's going to be expensive.
All right, thank you.
Any other discussion? Questions? All right, the motion is to approve under engineering items A through I. Diane, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Donches?
Yes.
Commissioner Tease?
Yes.
Commissioner Pappas?
Yes.
Commissioner Moriarty?
Yes.
Commissioner Shoneman?
Yes.
Motion passes. Now we'll go on to administration. There we have one motion and one informational item.
I move to approve the FY21 budget as presented at the February 2020 budget workshop.
Is there discussion on that motion? All those in favor say aye, or excuse me, sorry.
Aye.
Could you please call the roll? Sorry. Call the roll, please.
Mayor Donches?
Yes.
Commissioner Tease?
Yes.
Commissioner Pappas?
Yes.
Commissioner Moriarty?
Yes.
Commissioner Shoneman?
Yes.
Now we're to the informational director's report. Commissioner Tease has to leave because of a conflict.
Thank you.
Director's report.
Okay, I'll go through this quickly. The first, you probably have noticed that we have had bollards at the corner of Concord and Cortlandt that keep getting hit. So we are going to remove that bollard. We are not going to replace it and see what happens. We may, at some point, need to remove that bump out as well, but we're at least not going to replace the bollard because it's been hit too many times. Trucks just can't make that swing. So I just wanted to let you know that. We have a Safe Routes to School project going on at Charlotte Ave. A lot of things really great things going on there. We have new sidewalk on the right-hand side of the street across from Charlotte Ave School. We've added a 3-way stop at Charlotte Ave and Charlotte Street. We're putting in electronic speed indicator signs. And also there are currently 3 crosswalks, and we're going to remove 3 and we'll have 1. And also we're narrowing the roads some to slow traffic where that crossing will be. So those are going to be really great improvements. It's a long time coming. We've been trying to do this for almost 10 years now, and we finally were able to get the funding from the state. So this is a really great project, and we did meet with the PTO and the principal in the school and the neighborhood, so they're very excited. These are, we have, on our sidewalk program, we have sidewalk ramps that will be upgraded to ADA on Harris Road. Also, the same, we have some sidewalk reconstruction at the intersection of Alls and Nye Street. We did a service repair at 142 Ash Street. I wanted to point out, this was done by RWC Enterprises, and the homeowner paid the city $600, and the total cost of the city was $22,500. So it just goes to show you how outdated our fees are. The Biddy basketball teams had their championship. The 10th and 12th year-old kids, the Biddy champions of the Knicks. Their game was held on February 15th. 7 to 9-year-old boys, the champions were the Pistons. They played on the 20th. The girls, 10 to 12, the Celtics, that's a big name to live up to, was held on February 18th, and they were the winners. And then, again, the Celtics, ages 7 through 9, were the winners in that category, and they played on February 19th. We are working diligently on the boat ramp. If you haven't been down there, it's really looking great, and it's going to be a beautiful area. It's pretty remarkable. We're thinking about some other things we might do down there in sitting areas, and maybe even potentially frisbee golf or something like that. So, but it's going to be really great. We have began driving the cofferdam sheets into the river. And John Ibarra, Superintendent Ibarra, and his team are cutting in the road and building the road now, so it's really coming along nicely. The playground surfacing at Roby Park has been completed. This is a picture of the ice rink at Roby Park. And this has been a challenge this winter, given the fluctuation in temperature. But Park and Rec has done a good job maintaining that ice. This is a sewer repair that the street department did to a residence on Sim Court. A pipe had collapsed and needed to be replaced. This is another picture of the Greeley Park boat ramp. This is a picture of the road that I just mentioned. The contractor has already removed about 90% of the tree stumps. We did some emergency road repair. There were some really big potholes in the section of the road broke up near the Amherst Street Fire Station. And so we had to do an emergency repair there. We did some repairs to our salt barn. We had some fascia boards that were rotted, and it was leaking a little bit, so did that repair. The Newton Drive pump station is the first of the pump stations to be replaced in our current pump station upgrade project. All 13 are scheduled to either be modified or replaced in a two-phase approach over the next couple of years. So we've started with the Newton. We have primary clarifier upgrades. You can see a hatch that is being installed. This will allow us to safer access to some of the areas of the tanks. The picture on the right shows the condition of the concrete in tank number 2, which needed to be coated. Our energy recovery project is nearing completion finally. We're finishing all of the piping, and soon our CAT generators will be online and producing energy again. So that'll be, and that comes from the methane that we're generating. The phase 3 landfill, we are still waiting for, and a little bit frustrated, honestly, with DES. We still don't have approval to, even though it's been done quite some time. They have not given us approval to enter the phase 3, but hopefully we will get that soon. But this is a picture of the new pump house, which pumps the leachate and condensate from the phase 3 into the collection system, and then it's gravity fed to the wastewater treatment plant. You had asked me earlier a little bit about, these are small numbers, hard to read, but this is an update on recycling. You can see our cost per ton was $96.95 in February, $101.77 in January, $95.97 in December. So it's remained fairly consistent, but still pretty high, unfortunately. And that's it. Any questions?
Questions or comments for the director? All right, our next item is commissioners' comments. Do any commissioners have comments? Don't hear any. Personnel. We have 3 motions here.
So we have to go into non-public.
We do not, we actually, fortunately, Commissioner Pappas, do not have a non-public tonight.
So these are simply to
that's
deal with.
because they're resignations and not, okay, gotcha.
Yes. I think this is the first time in a long time.
So Commissioner Pappas, would you like to take up the 3 motions under personnel?
Sure. I'll move to approve and unseal the non-public minutes for personnel from the Board of Public Works for the meeting of January 30th, 2020. Under motion B, I'll move to accept the resignation of Emil Bravo, Assistant Construction Engineer, effective February 12th, 2020. And under motion C, to accept the resignation of Matthew Collins, Groundsman 1, effective February 24th, 2020.
Discussion on any of those items? Could the clerk please call the roll? And there's a motion on items A, B, and C.
Mayor Donchis,
Yes.
Commissioner Commissioner Pappas,
Yes.
Commissioner Moriarty,
Yes.
Commissioner Schoenman,
Yes.
So we have no non-public session. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll move to adjourn.
Commissioner Pappas has moved to adjourn. Could you please call the roll?
Mayor Donches,
Yes.
Commissioner Pappas,
Yes.
Commissioner Moriarty,
Yes.
Commissioner Schoenman,
Yes.
And the meeting of the Board of Public Works is adjourned at 6:59 PM.